Tonight, a teenager who was found not guilty of a 15-year-old girl has a warning for other kids.
Urging young people to be careful just who they're hanging around.
Yo, I'm Elijah Ellibert, and welcome to the 25th Factor Beyond the Game. Today, I have the honor of sitting with an incredible young man with an incredible story to tell. He was just recently exonerated for murder and all charges, so I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Yeshua Mathis. How you doing today, Yeshua?
Doing good. Happy to be here. Thankful.
So what is the first thing you did when you got home?
The very first thing, I gave my mom a big hug. I don't know when exactly it started. I'd probably say maybe junior year. Definitely junior year, I started probably hanging around with, the wrong group, probably people who I shouldn't have been hanging out with.
You were just released last week. How do you feel being out free?
I feel blessed. I'm definitely just happy to be home, after spending 20 months inside of jail, away from family, no physical contact with the world, grass. It feels really great to just be able to be home with my family and be able to start putting together, the plan that I was creating while I was in jail and doing the right thing.
Okay, so what is the first thing you did when you got home?
The very first thing, I gave my mom a big hug. While I was still coming out of the jail, I gave her a big hug, and then we went and had Partners Pizza. Okay. And we ate some pizza, and I couldn't even eat because I was just so happy to be home. But I ate it later, of course.
Yeah, of course. So did you eat with Aiden? So how was that like reuniting with your brother?
So Aiden actually, he was at school. So I came home and I sat on his bed and waited for him to come home and tried to surprise him. And this kid walked in the room and he saw me. He's like, "What's up?" I was like, "Really, bro? Like, you ain't like no excitement." But it was good reuniting with him. He's a lot bigger, of course. He had 20 months to grow, so he's a lot bigger, and I'm very happy to be reunited with my little brother, though, for sure.
Yeah, of course, because we all really grew up together. Yeah, you were kind of like a big brother to me.
Yeah.
Growing up with you being the water boy for our little league team.
Definitely.
You were just always around. So just tell the audience a little bit about like your upbringing, how you grew up, and things like that.
Well, I grew up here in Fayetteville. I played football, I played basketball, I ran track, made music as a kid, just did a lot of things. I was constantly, my little brother is best friends with him, so I was constantly around, him and their friend group, and constantly helping out, being the water boy for their football team, things of that nature. And I had a good upbringing. I had a very good upbringing, a blessed upbringing for sure.
Okay, so with that blessed upbringing, and your parents always teaching you what to do and always hanging out with us.
Definitely.
When you got to high school, what was that kind of switch when you started getting into kind of the wrong crowd?
Well, I think, for a lot of kids, especially, middle schoolers going into high school, once you hit that freshman year and, it's like, you're not in the same class with all your friends, so you gotta, find new people, find new groups. And I don't know when exactly it started. I'd probably say maybe junior year. Definitely junior year, I started probably hanging around with, the wrong group, probably people who I shouldn't have been hanging out with. That probably started around junior year. Can
you just talk to me a little bit first about the situation that kind of got you into all this?
So, as you said earlier, it was a murder. Unfortunately, a 15-year-old girl died, Maddie. She was shot and killed by Jacobian Brown. And I was there. I was there at the scene. I didn't know or have any knowledge, that what was going to happen was going to happen. It was a very horrific night, very, very nightmarish, and nobody should have to go through that. It was literally, I say, like living through a scary movie, a horror movie, not knowing what's going to happen, if you're going to die, anything. So it was a very, very scary night, very scary situation.
So before we turned the cameras on, we were talking about the situation, and you were talking about the text from your cousin.
Yes.
So just tell the audience a little bit about that.
So before everything happened and Maddie dying, I was on the phone with one of my friends, and we were going to go do the prank on her. That's the whole reason I was going over there, was to do the little prank on her, splash some soap and water on her. So as I'm, getting the soap and water, getting ready for the prank, I get a text from my cousin, just completely out the blue. I hadn't talked to her that day, but just completely out the blue, a text from my cousin. And she told me, she said, I don't know what you're doing tonight, but please just be safe. And she sent a red heart with it. And when I saw it, I literally said to myself and to my friend who was on the phone, I said, nah, maybe we shouldn't go. Like, maybe this is a message from God. Like, maybe this is a sign. Like, we shouldn't do it. And, me being the teenager I was at the time, I was like, nah, it's fine. Like, it's not a sign. I ignored the sign, and that led to 20 months of jail.
Right.
And somebody dying, unfortunately.
So with that group of friends that you were with, did you ever think that you were kind of in the wrong place, that you shouldn't really be doing these things or hanging out with these people?
Yes, I definitely did. One of my friends who was there, he was, one of my best friends, but the other one who actually committed the crime, I knew not to hang out with him, just from kind of seeing how his patterns would be over time from us hanging out. And we weren't supposed to be hanging out that day. We were just really supposed to be, I was with my other friend, and he wanted us to take us to his girl's house. So that's how we actually ended up even being together that day, because normally I wouldn't have been with him, because I noticed his patterns and I knew I needed to separate myself from them. But we were friends at one point early on, but after a while I did realize I had to separate myself from him.
With that group of friends, did you kind of knowing what you know, and knowing that it kind of wasn't like the right crowd, did you kind of feel trapped in that friend group to the point where you couldn't really get out?
Yes. Sometimes I definitely would feel trapped, or I would feel like maybe I need to go make new friends, you know what I'm saying? But going and kind of finding new friends who would accept you is kind of difficult, especially if you've been hanging around with the wrong group, and you try to go to the right group and they're not accepting you because you were hanging out with people in the wrong group. But I definitely wish I had chose better friends.
So with that being said, what would you say to anybody else in that kind of situation with a not so great friend group, on how they should stand up for themselves and get out that friend group?
Right. Well, my piece of advice for that would be, if you have a friend, or someone who or are close with, or maybe not friends with, but are often hanging around because of other friends, you need to come to the conscious decision that hanging out with this person or these people is not the best thing for you. It's not the best thing for your life, and it's not the best thing for, even your family, because sometimes the decisions we make can impact countless others, our families, our mothers, our dads, our brothers, people who depend on us and need us. Those hanging out with the wrong group can get us messed up and take us away from, who we love.
Right.
So my advice would be, if you have one of those friends, please just stay away, separate yourself, make the conscious decision that it's not okay to be hanging out with that person.
Okay. So I love that. But getting kind of off the topic of friends, you were in jail for 20 months.
Yes.
So kind of what was going through your head like like that first day when you got locked up?
That first day, I got arrested at 8:30 in the morning, and I think maybe about around 3 o'clock, they took me back to the holding cell, or the general population where all the other inmates were at. So, me sitting there at first, I'm not expecting, I'm still freaked out about the whole case, the whole situation. And now I'm a kid who's never been in jail before. Now I'm in jail, and I'm kind of just really like, what's next? Like, what's going to go on? Like, what's it like back there? And they took me back there, and I went in, and people were actually looking at me. They're like, oh, I saw you on the news. And, me, I'm clueless. I'm still just trying to figure out what's going on. And they're like, oh, I saw you on the news. And what are you here for? Did you, things like that. So it was scary, going into a den of wolves, a den of lions. It was definitely scary, but, sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, and you got to find a way to get through it. Right.
So you talk about it's a den of wolves, a den of lions. Yeah. So how did you get through that?
To be honest, man, I had to have faith. I was actually in a dorm called C4 at first. And in C4, the doors were really loud. Like when they opened, it sounded like gunshots because they opened really loud. So for me, that was kind of unsettling, you know, with everything that had happened. So it was unsettling. And I've always felt like this, but I feel like God, he actually moved me after a little while of me being in there, he moved me to C3 where the doors actually opened quieter. And the people in there, as soon as I walked in, they were like, "Do you believe in God?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, come to Bible study with me. Let's do prayer call, things like that. So I picked up my Bible, and that's when I first started actually reading my Bible. And that's reading the Bible and staying close to God got me 100% through those 20 months of being in jail.
Okay, right. Because you told me before this that you read your Bible cover to cover.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
Yes.
So how did your relationship with God grow from that experience?
It grew tremendously. I think how it grew was mainly just by staying disciplined and reading the word, you know, because, you know, sometimes times might have got hard, but I had to continue to battle those hard times with the word. And one of the scriptures is that, you know, the word, I think it's the word is the sword of salvation. So, you know, you use the word to defeat the devil. And so, you know, sometimes the devil is getting in my mind like, oh, what if I don't make it? What if this, you know, what if that, what if that? And every time that would happen, I would just open my Bible and I'd read it, and I would have cellmates and we would read 5 chapters a night every night. And eventually after reading those 5 chapters a night, I finished the whole Bible in 8 months, and it definitely got me through it. Okay.
So on the topic of your cellmates, did you have any like good friends or like a really kind of mentor?
Yeah, I definitely had mentors. I definitely had some good cellmates, and then I definitely had some not so good cellmates. One of the cellmates who actually ended up being one of my mentors for a little bit, he taught me a lot. He taught me that, you know, when I got out, I wanted to do a certain something, and he taught me, he said, you know, like, that's not bad, but think about it, Yeshua. If you do this, if you yada, 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 you know, like it's not good. And he made me realize a lot more about life, kind of, and that there's a lot more to live. And so I had some mentors. I definitely had some good cellmates. I had one cellmate that I'm actually still in contact. We still play the video game together.
Okay.
He got out a week before me, so.
All right.
Yeah.
On this last topic of being incarcerated, what was one thing or a few things that you really missed the most?
Good food.
Yeah, good food.
I missed good food. I missed pizza, fried chicken. I missed all that. You know, sitting in there, seeing the TV, you know, they constantly have these commercials coming on, KFC. They had some type of chicken pizza that I wanted to try. All types of crazy things. So I definitely miss food, and I definitely miss being able to watch sports, because I'm a sports fanatic. So I didn't get to see too much of sports. Eventually I did see some, and I had to stay updated with the newspapers. And actually when I was in jail, they would call me a commentator, and they called me Michael Jackson, because another thing I missed a lot, probably the most, was music, because I'm a music fanatic. I love music, and listening to music on the phone with my little brother through the jail phone sometimes, I mean, that would make the whole rest of my day better, you know, and I'm singing that song through my head for the rest of the day. And those are definitely 3 things that I miss most: is food, sports, and music. And I can't forget about my mom. I mean, she was my rock, and I was her rock. I called her multiple times every day, you know, just being able to be there for my mom and hug my mom. And you know, my father actually has dementia, so you know, she had to struggle with that at home, and then struggle with my whole situation with me being in jail. So me and my mom, we depended a lot on each other, and got each other through these trying times that we were faced with. But that's definitely something I miss the most, is being able to be there for my mom and hugging my mom and being able to really talk to her. And you know, we would have video visits for only 20 minutes. You know, I get to see her face once a week for only 20 minutes, you know, through a screen, you know. And sometimes the video visit that day might not work, you know. So being able to actually physically be there for her now and hug her and help her out, it really, I miss that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, I'm a mama's boy. So
Yeah,
it's
me
like,
too.
I couldn't imagine not being able to hug my mom for,
Yeah.
like, 20 months
Yeah.
and only see her face through a screen.
Right.
So, yeah, I can see how that would be the thing you would miss
Yeah,
the most. And
definitely.
okay, so what's your message to the audience about their relationship with God or their support system or even just the situation that you went through?
My message to the audience would be, for those of you who do have a relationship with God, yeah, I'm close with God now, and I mean, I love God with all my heart. Nobody can tell me that there isn't, because only by Him am I here today. If you have that relationship with God, don't wait until it's too late to really get into it. Like, stay in it, stay in the Word of God, continue to rely on Him, continue to depend on Him, and help you make your decisions for your betterment, and not your detriment. And just continue to rely on God, because I hate that I had to find God while in jail. I mean, it's a nice, beautiful story, but I mean, I would have loved to have found Him before then and not had to go to jail. So that's definitely my message about, just continue to believe in God and stay in God's word, and don't wait till you have to go to jail or something to learn. And my next piece of advice would be, like I said earlier, if you have friends and you shouldn't be hanging around them, they're toxic, they're always in drama, they're constantly arguing, being around them is going to do nothing but bring you down, and yeah, it might be temporarily fun hanging out with them, but it only takes that one temporarily night of fun to lead to a lifetime of nightmares and hell. So it's you got to choose better friends, because people associate you with who you hang out with. If you're hanging around silly, stupid people, then they're going to say you're silly and stupid, even though you may be the smartest, nicest person in the world.
Right.
They associate you with who you hang out with.
Okay, right. Because, like, with my dad is like a real God-fearing man.
Yes.
And I admire him a lot for that. So just to watch him and his relationship with God, I can only hope to have that kind of relationship that he has.
Right.
And that's what I aspire and I want to try to build.
Yeah.
Just to have something like what you have or what
Yes,
my dad
definitely.
has. So that's like and hearing your story, that's not how I want to be able to find God.
Right, definitely not.
So I think that your story is really what should drive me to find that relationship with God.
And I mean, sometimes a relationship with God is just between, you and Him. But, to build that, you gotta, just read your Bible, you know what I'm saying? Read, whether it's one chapter a night, 2 chapters. I did 5 chapters and finished it in 8 months. But as you continue to read the Bible and continue to read and pray, you will continue to grow, and, your relationship with God will change and morph and form as you continue to read that Bible and stay close to Him and stay praying.
Okay, Yeshua, just to kind of wrap up this situation and move on, what were the 3 biggest lessons that you learned?
The 3 biggest lessons I learned is, 1, first and foremost, continue to pray every day, stay close with God, read His word, don't ever give that up for anything. And the second lesson would be, just you got to choose better friends, because people do judge you and have feelings about you based on who you hang out with, based on how you carry yourself. If you're carrying yourself like how your silly, crazy friends are carrying yourself, then they will definitely, judge you like that, and you will be considered a silly, crazy friend, even though that may not be who you are.
So if Maddie's mom was right here in front of you, and you could say anything to her, get all the feelings off your chest, what would you say to Maddie's mom?
I would first tell Maddie's mom that, I'm sorry, sincerely, genuinely sorry for her loss. She should not have had to go through, finding her daughter, dead in her room. She should not have had to go through the feelings and angst and grief of having to lose your own child. That's horrible. And, as tough as my situation was, I couldn't imagine, how she could have felt. And, one day, if she would ever be okay, I'd love to, talk to her and actually have a conversation and give her a hug because, when I was at trial, I saw her at my trial a lot, and I just couldn't help but thinking sometimes, like, that is a seriously strong woman,
Right.
to sit there and have to go through that trial and, having to relive that night, finding your daughter dead. I mean, it was an incredible strength to see a mom, and especially her, with her whole situation, have to go through it.
Right.
She definitely, I noticed her strength, and she's very strong, and there's nothing I can say that'll bring Maddie back other than, continuing to advocate for, the youth and violence and, anti-gun violence, anti-bullying, all that. That's the only way that I can, really positively capitalize off of the whole, nightmare of, that night. And yeah, I'm dedicating myself to that.
Okay, so with you saying you want to be an advocate for all these things, what's next for you? What is next for you, Yeshua?
So what's next for me is I'm definitely going to be, advocating, if media platforms reach out, I definitely want to advocate and tell my story. When I was in jail, I thought of giving speeches at high schools, and telling these kids that, you're not invincible. As teenagers, we all think we're invincible and nothing is going to happen to us and we can depend on mommy, but sometimes you can't, we're not invincible. And, my situation is a true testimony to that.
Right.
And aside from that, I'm finishing high school. I only had like 1.5 credits left, so I will be finishing high school, getting my diploma actually, thankfully. And after that, I will go attend college. I think at Georgia State because it's downtown Atlanta area. But I want to attend Georgia State, and I want to major in audio engineering, mixing, mastering, learning how to mix and master audio and songs and things of that nature because, I make music. So that is what's next, and really just being there for my family and helping my dad out, my mom, and being there for my little brother because I missed out on a lot of his sporting events. So I gotta see him and all y'all play.
Yeah, of course. So you talk about you make music,
Right?
And you were telling me that you made a song kind of about the whole situation.
Yeah.
So did you want to kind of talk about like?
So the song that you're referring to, I wrote when I was in jail, and it was called "The Ville," I think is what I named it. The Ville meaning Fayetteville. So when I was writing the song, me and my cellmate had gotten into an argument. He was saying that I was one of those kids from good neighborhood who wanted to be all big and bad and stuff. And I was trying to tell him, like, no, I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. But him saying that actually inspired me and made me realize that there are a lot of good kids who come from good families who are blessed and privileged beyond what they can even comprehend. And, they go and listen to certain music or listen to, certain music, and they take in these negative influences. And so now they want to be big and bad, and they want to, go against their parents, which, a lot of teenagers do, but they want to go against their parents and, do these things that they should not do, because that's how a lot of times, us thinking we're invincible, that's how we end up getting in trouble, by thinking that, like, oh yeah, we're privileged, everything's going to be all right. Nothing's going to happen to us when, something can definitely happen.
Right. So on the topic of the song, is there a place we can find it, or is it out?
No. I don't know if I thought about turning all those songs into just a book of poems and releasing that. I might want to do that, but plus I got so many lyrics written down. I wrote them down so I could record them when I get home. So I might record it. I might if I come to it, or I might, you might hear the lyric itself in one of my songs or something whenever I do release. So
okay, yeah, I'll have to stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely got to stay tuned.
Yeah, and on the topic of you just trying to talk at high schools and just talk to young kids, I'm kind of glad that this podcast could kind of be like that first step in that journey for you.
Definitely.
So I'm glad that I can be a part and witness firsthand your journey coming from that kind of situation. So we're wrapping everything up. I just have one last question for you.
What's up?
What is one more advice that you would give to young kids, don't have that relationship with God,
Right.
aren't in the right friend group,
Right.
and just like some advice you would give to some of those high school kids that you're soon going to be talking to?
My one more piece of advice would be to, if you're not close with God and if you don't believe or if you want to believe, choose to believe. You know what I'm saying? Because there's nothing that harms you from believing. There's nothing other than you having to read the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And that's a blessing more than it is harming you, other than taking your time away from video games or whatever.
Right.
So it'd definitely be that, and it would also be to treat people how you want to be treated. I mean, that's
Golden rule.
huge, because I mean, one of the only reasons I made it out is because even though I was part of a situation, a lot of people knew me and could back me for how I behaved throughout my whole life, and that I was always a good kid. And this just showed that I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, because I've had a lot of overwhelming support of people saying like, "Oh, we knew you would never do that. We knew you're a good kid. Like, we're so happy you're home." So treat people how you want to be treated, because you never know what somebody is going through at home, at their home life. You never know what somebody is, experiencing, whether it's bullying or whether it's, anything like that. So you never know when you might push somebody over the edge. So treat people how you want to be treated.
Okay, Yash, we're closing out. I just have one more thing for you before we end this podcast. Just to welcome you to the 25th Factor crew.
That's
I got a
sweet.
shirt for
I
you here.
appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But while he's getting that together, I just want to say thank you for coming out today.
It's a nice shirt.
Thank you. But thank you for coming out today early in the morning. I know there's a lot of stuff you have to do, but you came here and helped me, support me.
Yeah.
So I just like to thank you for that.
Yeah.
And
thank you for helping me get my message out.
Of course, yes, of course. I really hope you taught them something, because I got to learn a lot from you today. Yeah. This is another reason why I call my show the 25th Factor Beyond the Game, because it's just not about football, it's just not about sports, but it's about learning from young men like this and other people about their experiences, about what we should avoid or what we should do to better our lives, because it's just not about football, or it's just not about your sport, just to show that life is more than what you think. I'm Elijah Elibert. This is the 25th Factor Beyond the Game, because numbers aren't everything.